let's talk a little bit about queerness in the Epstein files. This is like a complicated, oh goody, this is complicated. Okay, so the reason that this came up this week, I think specifically, is Congress saw the unredacted files, and very quickly Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna said, hey, why is Les Wexner.
I know, it's a bit of a tongue twister. Yeah, it is.
Why is Les Wexner's name redacted from the files here? And then very quickly they were like, oh, no, never mind, we're not hiding anything. Okay. Just as a reminder, Les Wexner is a billionaire and a CEO, and he basically ran, like if you were in a mall in 2002, it was owned by Les Wexner. He was the CEO of Limited 2, of Victoria's Secret, of Bath and Body Works, of Abercrombie and Fitch. And in fact, we know somebody who says that he was trafficked by this group of people. Jeffrey Epstein was Les Wexner's financial manager for over a decade and operated one of his money management businesses out of a house owned by Wexner. And we thought it was an opportunity to talk about the fact that visually what we see is mostly now adult women who are girls during the years of Epstein's operation. But it seems to me that that's probably not the extent of what was happening there, and it prompted us to want to have a conversation. So let's go. You brought this up, so you cook.
Yeah, I mean, I think there has long been rumblings that Epstein and Wexner had some type of sexual relationship, and then this has become something that I've been interested in. There's also sort of a rumbling that perhaps he had a relationship with Leon Black. And the interesting thing about Black and Wexner's relationships is that there was a lot of money exchanged, and there was also a lot of physical time spent together. If we go through the emails, Leon Black, who, by the way, just to bring everybody up to speed, is this disgraced former private equity guy, was the CEO of Apollo Group, had to step down because of his ties to Epstein, also was accused of raping someone at Epstein's apartment. That's the other thing about this. It's a little tricky. I just want to say this. We're trying to make sure that this is the language we would use, but we know we're also encountering a little bit of censorship on TikTok over this. So anyway, a underage girl said that Black raped her at Epstein's apartment. So that is something else. But I think there's a very good chance that Epstein was queer. And I'm not seeing a lot of people talk about it. And it's just like, how do we even approach this conversation of queerness in the Epstein files? And Rebecca, you were sharing a little bit about one of the first people to come out about Epstein was a trans person.
Yeah, I want to give Amanda a second to respond, and then we'll talk about Ava Cordero, who, as far as I know, is the only,
So the reason I'm a little cautious about identifying Jeffrey Epstein as queer or bisexual is not because I don't think he slept with men or boys, but because I think Epstein's sexuality was power. I don't think that he was queer or bisexual in a way that means that he was like equally attracted to multiple genders, or not even equally attracted, like attracted to multiple genders. I think what got Epstein off was power, and being able to have power over women and girls, power over men who work for him, power over boys. And that is a very, very different thing than claiming a sexuality and identifying the people that you feel romantic and sexual attraction to.
That is a really interesting distinction. I agree. It's like his sexuality was equally blackmailing presidents as it was, the other sick things that he did. I think that that's a really interesting.
Yeah. And I think it is important not to entangle those two things, because it is already such a common talking point among conservatives that queer people are predators.
Right.
That's why we were curious about this conversation.
We were like, okay, so if Epstein did have a sexual relationship with Les Wexner, what does that mean? Because the other thing that is another article, one of the last interviews that Epstein gives in 2019 to the New York Times, he likens pedophilia to being gay.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see like how you unpack that comment.
So this is a very common criticism that we hear about queer people, right? Like, and this goes back decades, to actually goes back centuries, actually, but at least in like modern American history, this goes back decades to, you know, hide your sons. Queer people are coming to turn them into sissies. You know, like this is a very common refrain, and it is also, there is also a segment, and I want to sort of talk about this carefully, but there is a segment of people who feel attraction to underage people, but do not act on it, and try to frame that as a sexuality. And that is what Jeffrey Epstein is trying to do in this article, although obviously he acted on it because he's a predator and a monster. But there is a small group of people who try to claim that the sexuality of an adult who is attracted to multiple genders is somehow equivalent to an adult having inappropriate romantic or sexual feelings for someone who is underage. And I want to say categorically, those are not related in any way. But that's the parallel that Epstein's trying to draw. And in some ways it's clever because he is trying to give himself an out, right? Like, well, if you guys are okay with queer people, then you should be cool with people like me. You know,
and
but it's also
in this conversation, what he's saying is he's like, I think that like history is going to look back on this differently. So he's also like framing it around the idea of like, hey, 50 years ago, people had, you know, different opinions. And it's like,
he's saying it's regressive.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it's not, because, and a lot of times what people are trying to do is actually draw a parallel to like ancient Greece and ancient Rome. But the way that people in antiquity understood sexuality, and especially the relationship between, first of all, not between men and boys, it was between like older men and younger men, was very, very different than our sort of modern understanding of sex and sexuality. And so it just isn't even comparable at all. So it's like what he's doing is he's like trying to give himself an out.
Gladiators fighting one another in rings for sport. Like, I don't know, man. Like,
I mean, we do have the UFC. Yeah, there's no lions, but
you know. I guess that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. I'm just saying, I don't know if our best case of reference is to be like, well, they did it in Rome. You know what I mean?
No, it's absolutely not, because that like it is nearly impossible to explain how different understandings of sex and relationship and marriage and all of that was in antiquity. Like it has nothing to do with how we think about the world today. You know, and Epstein saying that also gives people the ability to be like, see, queer people are predators, because if he's like them, then they're all awful, you know. So it's just like doubly awful.
Which, by the way, is, I think, you know, you've made the point. I think that there is part of what they're trying to do in this weird way is like sanitize this whole thing. Even with, you pointed out, they're no longer calling it the Epstein files. They're calling it the Epstein library. And I feel like there's,
oh my God, I'm obsessed with this. And you know what? If you left me a comment and said that I was overreacting about this, I'm here to categorically say, fuck off. Because this is like a special interest of mine. The Department of Justice website is has it as the Epstein library. Okay. And that is not what we've been calling it for years now. We've been calling them the Epstein files. And so like, you know, the interesting thing to me about Republicans is like language matters when they want it to matter. When you say like, hey, we're going to change this racist mascot's name, they're like, no, I'm 7. That's my favorite team. Like that's how they react. But then when they do things like this, they're like, it's just a word, right? Who cares? But somebody said to me like, well, it's called the library because it's searchable. And I was like, oh, it's not searchable. It's not searchable.
If you're like EFTD640
black line, I've gone to the library. Okay. That's not the experience. And so
files are also searchable, by the way. Like that's not
right. Well, but that also, like, it's very clearly that, you know, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, like there are distinct people in the JD Vance who built a media career saying release the files, who are now in control of said files, who will not release those files. And so now it's the Epstein library, you know, like, which also, by the way, when we were talking about this is like a broader conversation, is this reminded me of how they rebranded the Clinton scandal into the Lewinsky scandal. Is like they do it all the time.
I'm gonna die mad about that.
And also, I was thinking about the word scandal, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I'm not saying that there weren't things that were, you know, terrible about that around power dynamics, but like scandal is such an interesting word.
Mm-hmm.
That,
yeah,
like,
I mean, because it's titillating, right? You say scandal, and people are all automatically are like, "Ooh, you know,
we want it,
a little sexy, a little dirty."
Right. And so, but also to go back, like my husband brought this up. The thing that a president wants most is a library. Maybe not the, but that's like that's the thing that you achieve. You get a library. I know, it was a good one, right? Occasionally the straight men know what's up. I know.
Not in this house.
You guys, he told me, he looked me straight in the eye and he goes, this was the other day, I told you this. He looked me dead in the eye and he goes, I have no idea what happened to Nancy Guthrie. He's like,
you and the nation, Mike. You and the nation.
Like, first of all, sweetie, take a breath. Take a breath on you. Okay.
I don't know what happened.
Like, I was like, dude, no one, if we knew what happened, Nancy, like, if you knew, I'd send you right to Tucson.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, but I thought that was a really good point. And I also think that libraries, Amanda, hear me out. I think libraries are inherently queer.
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, look, I love a library. I am doing an event at a library tomorrow that I'm so excited about.
Oh, good fun. What's the event? Do you want to tell us, or is it?
I'll tell you at the end when we talk about the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's your moment. Yeah.
But the thing about, when you hear library, you think, preservation of information, you think archives, and I think library to a lot of people sounds a little more like elevated.
Right? Third space. Libraries are a third space too. And I'm like, guess what's not a third space?
The files about Jeffrey Epstein being literally like a cartoon villain. And I mean that in the like, the things that he has done are so unbelievably vile that it is just, it's hard to believe.
Going back to this idea of like, there are all but certainly boy and men victims, survivors of this situation, of this, I don't even know what to call this like conspiracy.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about like, perhaps why we haven't seen that as like that even in a taboo world, it is even still too taboo to include boys and men.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you listened to any of the Sasha Riley interview.
Okay, let's talk about it. Can we talk about that for a second? Yeah. You cook, but the answer is yes, and I'm so curious what you think about it.
Yeah, so I like full disclosure, I am a survivor of a violent CSA, so I had to work my way through those Sasha Riley interviews in like small pieces. But I did listen to the whole thing, and the one thing that he said someone said to him that has just been stuck in my head is he said that he was told that he was safe from being murdered because boys were harder to find. And it has been just echoing in my head that like women and girls are disposable, but it's much harder to source boys, because of the taboo around it, because of the shame, because of the way boys are protected and girls are not, although obviously still plenty of boys and young men and adult men who are victims and survivors of SA, and their voices have historically been lost for a couple of reasons. One, because of the shame of living in this society where we think that especially men who've been assaulted by other men, that is emasculating because it makes them gay. It doesn't. It's not how it works.
It's interesting to me. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's interesting to me that the sort of like biggest meme to come out of this thing is the joke that Trump would have given President Bill Clinton a blowjob. And I'm like, like the fact that that's the joke that came out of this says so much to me about like shame and queerness. Like that's like to the average American citizen, that's the worst thing that could be in the files. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. It's not the murder and the violence and, you know, all of that. It's the like,
if that's all that was in there, I'd be like, okay, great.
Yeah.
Like two fucking equally powered consenting adults.
Exactly.
Fucking
Like,
get it.
Stop preying on your interns, Clinton. Absolutely. Go have a relationship with a billionaire.
Another fucking powerful dude.
Yes.
And that's like, I did see, like, I felt like there was a lot of homophobia that came out when people heard that. But then, like, it's like, I'm not saying, like, and to your point about, like, it's not about queerness, it's about power. But I'm like, okay, like,
I know I'm not very, that's like,
such a good point. But now I'm also like, if it was about queerness, y'all would have a problem with it.
Yeah. Also that. But it's because it is because no matter how much progress we have made and are desperately trying to hang on to with our fingernails right now, there is still this underlying belief, especially in the US, that to be a man who enjoys sex or romance with other men is emasculating, that you are less of a man if you are gay or bisexual or pan. And that is categorically false. But that is the belief that underlies these jokes about Clinton and Trump, that like Trump must not be as much of a man as he thinks he is, you know, if he's
that's right. Exactly. That's what the joke is that they are less of men, which by the way, I also think is misogyny, because anything like all a downward scale. I also want to throw out that one of the, I didn't know this story, but somebody a creator lifted this up for me. Ava Cordero, a trans woman, was one of the original people to bring a lawsuit against Jeffrey Epstein in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And the New York Post reported on it, but they reported on they outed her as trans. And so the scandal of the story became her trans identity and not the fact that Jeffrey Epstein had sexually assaulted her at age 16. And that's something that I wanted to talk about is like, one, like, I'm sure there are more trans women, but the fact that like that this couldn't have come out because those who were reporting on it only saw it as, you know, as they reported as a freak show, you know, as opposed to like a true child, a girl being assaulted.
Yeah. I mean, it's disgusting. And we, you know, certainly we always like to make the victim the story, especially when it's a victim of someone who is, you know, powerful and or beloved. But it is just, it just makes me angry on like in like my bone marrow. You know what I mean? Like it just is this deep and burning fury at the inability to see trans people as a whole, but especially a trans person who is the victim of a monstrously powerful predator as nothing more than her gender. You know, like it just makes me furious.
Well, and her gender is like a punch line too. Like that was the center of it. This is like a little bit tangential, but last night I watched the movie A Mighty Wind, with blessed Catherine O'Hara, which is really like funny and fun. And then the literal last scene is a joke about one of the characters coming out as a trans woman. And it's not funny. You know, like to that, you know, in the context of the movie, then the punchline was, oh my God. And the funniest part of the movie at the very end of all of the funny jokes we have, the funniest joke is the man with a baritone comes out and wants to live life as a trans woman. And I just thought of that in terms of this story.
Well, think about the Barbie movie. Like I have a lot of problems with the Barbie movie and I'm finally ready to talk about it. But the end of the Barbie movie, the ultimate thing to Barbie is to be able to go to the gynecologist.
Oh, interesting.
And like, I was like, that's anti-trans.
Yeah. And it has like, that's,
But the, if you think the Barbie movie was this huge win for women in feminism, we'll do another episode and we'll invite Amanda back.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts. But that also makes me think of I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mark of Cain, which is like an Australian heavy metal band. But the lead singer of Mark of Cain came out as trans, I think just this week, and revealed that her new name is Josie. And it's like, and again, watching the internet respond to a person who they believe to be not just a man, but a fairly stereotypically masculine man as the guitarist and lead singer of a heavy metal band, finding out that that person was in fact a woman and that her name is Josie. Like, it has been very interesting watching people try to reconcile with that, which on the one hand, I'm like, there shouldn't be anything to reconcile. She said she's a woman. Her name's Josie. Like, case closed.
Get over it.
But of course, that's not how the world works. But it's that same type of, like, there have been those same types of jokes going around, and it's just this
absolute entanglement here that I can't, I don't know. I saw this story of Ava Cordero and I was like, how freaking tragic that this girl had the audacity to go after one of the most powerful men in the world. And what came of it was that she was outed, and that we're still dealing with those issues, and it's still looked at as a deviance or a joke in the face of like true deviance. And I will never forget, now I will always think of this, is that their sexuality is not queerness or like any kind of, like, they what they are attracted to, and I'm going to put Bill Clinton in this category, I'm going to put Trump in this category, what they are attracted to is power.
And I also I don't want to give the impression there aren't terrible queer people. Many of them are in the cabinet right now.
Of of course. But like the idea that like they are not attracted to children. They are attracted to having a sense of power over somebody.
Yeah, that would be that is my belief with Epstein. Obviously, never having met the man or psychoanalyzed him, and thank God.
Right? Yeah.